Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today as we in the UN system commemorate International Women's Day 2023. The theme for International Women's Day this year is DigitALL, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. The United Nations observance of International Women's Day recognizes and celebrates the women and girls who are championing the advancement of technological change and digital education. International Women's Day 2023 will explore the impact of the digital gender gap on widening economic and social inequalities. Today's event will also spotlight the importance of protecting the rights of women and girls in digital spaces and addressing online ICT facilitated gender-related violence. UN Women is pleased to partner with the UN Resident Coordinator's Office for Barbados in the Eastern Caribbean to bring together an accomplished panel of women from across the Caribbean region who are indeed trailblazers in this rapidly evolving digital landscape as we seek to commemorate International Women's Day 2023. To set the stage for our discussion, I first invite you to view a brief video.
In the digital age, our systems still perpetuate bias, inequality, and violence in the lives of women and girls. Technological progress is outpacing progress towards gender equality. This is not progress. On this International Women's Day, we make 4 calls. 1. Remove all barriers to access the digital world. 2. Educate and train women and girls in STEM. 3. Enable women to create tech that meets their needs. 4. Eliminate online gender-based violence. Today we power on to create an equal digital future for all.
It is now indeed my pleasure to invite one of our UN gender champions, the UN Resident Coordinator for Barbados in the Eastern Caribbean, Mr. Didier Pritchebuk, to offer his opening remarks.
Thank you, Angela, and good morning, everyone. I want to acknowledge our distinguished women leaders panelists this morning, as well as our development partners, including the European Union delegation and Canada, civil society representatives, our wider audience, and of course my dear colleague Tony Brodber, representative of UN Women Multi-Country Office for the Caribbean, other colleagues from the UN, members of the media. So happy International Women's Day to everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning on UETV. It's also great to note the vibrant purple reflected here at the UN House in Barbados, but also wherever you are, as we celebrate the achievements of women and girls in all our corners and spaces. We have a rich panel with us today, including youth, and I applaud their work and look forward to hearing more about their inspiration in order to bridge the gender gap in ICT. And it has reaped gains in business development, agriculture, and digital upskills of over 1,000 Caribbean girls. So we look forward to learning from their experience today. In a world where women make up under 1/3 of the workforce in science, technology, engineering, and math, this year's theme, Digital Innovations and Technology for Gender Equality, really puts into focus how we can expand routes to education and opportunities for women and girls. Women and girls are leaders, change makers, caretakers, and peacemakers, and yet to this day, they're still forced to fight for their rights, from structural injustice to being marginalized, and even facing gender-based violence. But the internet has the power to transform, but it's actually not shared equally. Global data tell us that of the estimated 2.7 billion people currently unconnected, the majority are women and girls. I also want to remind that in the Caribbean, gender-based violence persists, with between 39 to 55% of women, depending on countries, experiencing intimate partner violence. And in partnership with the European Union, the UN system will continue to fight against it through our Spotlight initiative joint programs in Grenada and in the wider Caribbean region. We have also partnered with governments, civil society, and the private sector across the Eastern Caribbean to support the digital transition in order to improve livelihoods, enhance social protection, education, and ensure, in the end, more equitable future for all. So as women and girls still fight to access new opportunities, digitalization is definitely a chance to uplift them, to give them a stronger voice, and to economically empower them. So today our panel of women leaders will discuss how to close this digital divide and increase the representation of women and girls in science and technology. I really look forward to it because it is critical that we invest in women and work together as one if we want to achieve the sustainable development goal, but also if we want a society that is inclusive, just, and prosperous for women, girls, men, and boys everywhere. So I want to renew today the commitment of the whole United Nations system to this goal. Again, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Didier. Thank you for your insightful thoughts and for stressing the importance of this year's commemorative theme and for further setting the stage for our discussion. I'll take this opportunity to just share a little additional information on why this area of focus is so important for us, not only here in the Caribbean, but globally. Bringing women and other marginalized groups into technology results in more creative solutions and has a greater potential for innovations that meet women's needs and promote gender equality. Their lack of inclusion, by contrast, comes with massive costs. As per the UN Women's Gender Snapshot for 2022 report, women's exclusion from the digital world has shaved $1 trillion from the gross domestic product of low and middle income countries in the last decade, a loss that is reported to grow to 1.5 trillion by 2025 without action. Reversing this trend will require tackling the problem of online violence, which a study of 51 countries revealed 38% of women had personally experienced. A gender-responsive approach to innovation, technology, and digital education can increase the awareness of women and girls regarding their rights and civic engagement. Advancements in digital technology offer immense opportunities to address development and humanitarian challenges and to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Unfortunately, the opportunities of the digital revolution also present a risk of perpetuating existing patterns of gender inequality. Growing inequalities are becoming increasingly evident in the context of digital skills and access to technologies, with women being left behind as a result of this digital gender divide. The need for inclusive and transformative technology and digital education is therefore critical for a sustainable future. This morning's panel discussion is the first in a series of conversations that the UN Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean proposes to host with Caribbean women in innovation, technology, and digitalization as a means to first, spotlighting female roles in these areas, second, discussing the opportunities and challenges with those already working in this field, and third, to highlight recommendations to reinforce opportunities and address challenges. Joining us to kick off this very meaningful discussion is a panel of esteemed professional women working in the digital space who have enthusiastically agreed to share with us their insights and reflections on their experience as trailblazers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. And we now include arts as well for the Caribbean and more globally. I take this opportunity to introduce our panelists in no particular order. Janika John is a software engineer and founder of Women in Tech Caribbean. She's from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Her mission is to connect the best of our female tech talent across the Caribbean and Caribbean diaspora to empower and elevate each other, network, share opportunities, and help each other to develop our technical skills and more. a truly diverse group of data scientists, Web3 consultants, customer success growth marketers, full stack developers, blockchain developers, and everything in between. Our community of members work with or for some of the most impactful companies in tech, such as Twitter, Google, Forbes, Nike, and the UN. Our second panelist hails from Tortola, British Virgin Islands. Jennifer Potter is a digital transformation specialist, experienced in regional tech, strategy and leadership, governance, risk compliance, and data management. She helps savvy business leaders develop and execute strategic plans to manage growth, expansion, and acquisition. She's credited with successfully modernizing high impact financial service environments and is currently the Director of Operations with George Henry Partners, a legal and professional services firm in the BVI. Third, we have Bevon Charles, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Akata Farms in Grenada. She's an entrepreneur, a youth advocate, founder, and Chief Executive Officer of Akata Farms, which is a social enterprise, and she's experienced in leveraging technology towards achieving zero hunger amidst the challenges of being a tech social enterprise in the agricultural sector. And our fourth panelist this morning is Janelle Gentles, who is a digital nomad. She's a tech enthusiast, a women's rights advocate, and an agri-tech expert, and she hails from Jamaica. As noted, she's a digital nomad who has traveled across 7 African countries while working remotely in tech. As an ambassador with Caribbean Girls Hack, she leads mentorship and digital upskilling initiatives for women in the region. Currently, she is applying her expertise in agri-tech to lead a team of engineers based in Ghana to build digital solutions for farmers across the globe. As a Pan-Africanist, she is passionate about building bridges for development and collaboration between the West Indies and Africa. Welcome, ladies, and happy International Women's Day. We truly appreciate you taking the time to spend a part of your day with us discussing an area that is near and dear to you. So let's get started. As we approach our first question, we recognize that growing inequalities are becoming increasingly evident in the context of digital skills and access to technologies. With women being left behind as the result of this digital gender divide, the need for inclusive and transformative technology and digital education is therefore critical for a sustainable future. We recognize that entrenched gender biases are barriers to girls and women studying, considering, and pursuing careers in STEM. These biases are cultural and are perpetuated by parents, teachers, and sometimes the students themselves. I will pose the question to our panelists. How can we enhance awareness of STEM or STEAM, including the A, opportunities for women and girls on a national or a community level, thereby dismantling the gendered barriers? What was your inspiration for going into this field? And we can perhaps start off with Bevon.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Well, for me, the awareness for STEM opportunities for women and girls on a national community level has to be encouraged by promoting role models, providing mentorship and networking opportunities, and also creating an inclusive learning environment. Role models, therefore, can inspire, motivate young women to pursue careers in ICT by showcasing their own achievements and breaking down the gender stereotypes. Mentorship and networking can provide guidance support, access to resources that can help women overcome these same barriers and achieve their own goals. Right? An inclusive learning environment can foster a sense of belonging. We need that, and to encourage a diverse perspective and ideas. For me, I have always been in love with agriculture. Growing up firsthand in Grenada, seeing the challenges that farmers face, I knew I had to think out the box and leverage technology to kind of solve those challenges. The challenges that we normally face is the working conditions, labor, lack of access to information, market, financing. But by leveraging technology, those things can improve. It can help us to position ourselves better, be competitive in a global market. And for me, I had to leverage technology in the agricultural space. I'm continually learning and researching and try to develop new things to improve that same space, but also to create enterprises that other coming after me can step into. But it's we have to leverage technology if we have to change, and if we have to impact change on a social level. We definitely have to use technology to do so, Angela.
Thank you very much for that insightful response. The connection with agriculture is definitely one that is at the forefront of our mind as we, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, recognize just how critical we need to move the needle forward in terms of addressing food security. And that means bringing innovation and technology into the fore. So you're definitely at the cutting edge of some of that new wave of thinking. So we appreciate that engagement. Janika, would you like to also tackle this question?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, when I think about this question, it kind of hits home and kind of near and dear to my heart as well. As you mentioned, I'm a software engineer, and I'm gonna really speak from the perspective of coders and girls coding. And from my experience, giving girls the opportunity, girls and women, the opportunity to really be hands-on with coding, for them to realize how easy it is to get started, the things that they can build, to kind of point them in the direction as well in terms of growing and evolving in this field, because this is a field that is very fast paced. Things change from day to day. For example, I went to the University of the West Indies, I studied computer science there. And so much has changed since, I won't mention exactly how many years ago I studied computer science. And a big part of succeeding in this area has a lot to do with research and being able to continue to keep on top of the game, let's say, or on top of the type of subjects and topics that are happening. And so, to answer your question, if we really focus on giving girls hands-on experience, for example, connecting them with workshops, having parts of our courses or curriculums in secondary school where we give them, for example, small projects, then they can kind of see how easy it is to get started, as I mentioned before, and kind of whet their appetite a little bit. The reason why I specifically mentioned that as well, in last summer, I got the opportunity to teach a coding camp for girls, and the type of questions that I got helped me realize just how much curiosity there is out there in the Caribbean right now if we give them the opportunity to ask these questions. I love that Bevan also mentioned mentorship, because through programs like this, they're able to ask somebody who already has experience in the field, and kind of see what the possibilities are. So to close off, I would really like to challenge curriculum developers, teachers in the field right now to think about how they could give hands-on opportunity to our girls right now. I think it's a very actionable point, and see where it grows from there.
Thank you so much. Coming out of some research that has been done in the region, we do recognize that our curricula have not kept pace with the advances that have been taking place in this digital space. So that's a very relevant point. We also recognize that training and competency in STEM are not just skills that are needed for the future, but they really are the foundation of what we need now in all sectors. So thank you for sharing that point. I think it's a very, very critical one. I think at this point, let's turn to Jennifer. We'd appreciate to hear your reflections on this question.
Hi, Angela. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Some incredible answers given by the panelists before. What I would add is, one, we keep speaking. The more we talk about opportunities in STEM for women and girls, increases the awareness and increases the opportunity that they receive the messages that we're sending, that these are areas which we need more representation, need more gender equality, and so on. I think one of the things that we can do community-wise is to stop making a big deal of girls and women that choose careers that are perhaps non-traditional roles. I think sometimes we tend to focus on people taking non-traditional roles as opposed to encouraging that, and we can do more of that. I also think the development of digital skills on a whole, digital skills are life skills. At this point in human development, digital skills are necessary for life, and having women and girls represented in the areas of ICT and STEM and STEAM means that it's more representative of who we are and how we are using the world. I think we also need to not limit the conversation to opportunities for girls, because there are women who are mid-career or else who need to improve their digital skills, perhaps reskill themselves for a newer environment. And there are lots of opportunities, and people shouldn't be afraid or reluctant to jump into technology or ICT or those digital spaces and to find new careers and to find new areas to contribute. I also wanted to talk about increasing the awareness of bias. I think sometimes bias that is unhelpful to women and girls in STEM areas or in areas like ICT, the biases are so ingrained that sometimes we don't think about them. And I think more awareness about the bias and how they present in school or in the work environment would also help us to encourage greater participation and highlight more opportunities for women and girls in ICT and STEM.
Thank you very much. And thank you for highlighting a very critical point in that this digital revolution that we are a part of really expands across the life cycle. It's not just something for young people. It's not just something for an academic environment. But as we look at how our lives are transforming in relation to digital technology, it's really something that all of us at any age and stage need to have some measure of familiarity with. One of the challenges that we see oftentimes relate to access to equipment, to devices, to data, to enable a greater comfort level to be developed by persons who may not necessarily use technology in their work environments, but may use it more in their home life or to access their banking and other facilities. But there still needs to be a sensitization and awareness and a comfort level built around technology for all age groups. So thank you very much for bringing that to the discussion. I would like now to turn to Jaleen and ask her to share her thoughts on this question as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Angela, and happy International Women's Day to everyone today. For me, a big thing is representation. When I reflect on my early career days, it was really interacting with women in the industry, in the field that looked like me. And that gave me some empowerment, some inspiration to pave my own path in this career journey. So definitely living out loud and being very unapologetic as women in tech, as Black women in tech, and knowing and trusting that somebody's watching, will be inspired, and will likely take something from your journey and add to theirs, and that might just change their life. Also, I definitely want to just applaud UN Women, the Caribbean office, for just this initiative. This series of panels is a start of what we're talking about, just bringing women together, women of color together, for us to share our stories. And while we're here, we're able to dispel myths, because if we want to enhance awareness, we definitely cannot paint a picture as if there's just one way to get into the technology industry. A lot of young girls and youth in general might feel like software engineering is not for them, or certain very technical paths are not for them. But the reality is there are so many opportunities and possibilities that fit under this digital umbrella. So I'm a product manager. I do not write lines of code during my daily life on the job, but I'm still very much an integral player in shaping the digital solutions that are being created and that are impacting society. Lastly, and I have heard my fellow panelists raise this point, every woman deserves to be empowered through digital skills. It's not just for young children, young girls, and it's not just for people who are aiming to break into the technology industry. Diverse professionals can benefit from digital skills, and just implementing digital technologies in whatever industry they're a part of. If you're a small business owner, I think we have seen now how leveraging tools like social media and just having a high level of digital literacy can take your business to the next level. It can transform your life and your earning capacity. So those are some of the conversations that we might not think of immediately when we think of women in tech, but I do want us to start having those discussions as well.
Thank you so much. There's so much that you shared there, and so many different points that we could unpack, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity in subsequent discussions to do so. I think giving recognition to the fact that there are too few women of color in this technical space. In our preliminary discussions leading up to this panel, we talked a little bit about that, and that's something that we need to focus a little attention on. The creativity that is unleashed through work in the digital space is also an area that we hopefully will get to a little bit in the last question. But I think there's so much to discuss that is kind of uncharted territory for some of our dialogue in this region that I really do hope future opportunities present, where we can dive a little deeper into some of those areas. The second question I'm going to pose to you panelists is in relation to what is the evidence of the link between qualifications in STEM or STEAM disciplines and enhanced potential to succeed in business and top management. And when you reflect on this question, I would also like you to think about it from the angle of entrepreneurs. So a lot of the business persons that we work with in the Caribbean region through UN Women and some of our other development programs are micro, small, and medium enterprises. We spoke to some of your connections with agriculture, for example. So again, looking at addressing the needs of our micro and small and medium enterprises. So we're not always talking about big conglomerates. So what are your thoughts on this question in relation to both the small business enterprise and also working in top management? And there's no particular order. So if anyone wants to jump in to tackle it first, please do so. Your perspective.
Sure, I will
Yeah, I
start.
can go right ahead. Oh, you
Oh,
go ahead, Bevan.
you could go ahead. You could go ahead.
Okay, well, I will just quickly share my thoughts. I will go a little bit off the beaten path. You did talk about, research and links, and there's a lot of data out there to suggest links between certain fields or the other. But the reason why I say I will go a little bit off the beaten path is because I was reading this book called Mindset, and it spoke a little bit about, it spoke to the fact that a lot of us are not born knowing how to do certain things. So, for example, if you think about the language that you speak natively, you were exposed to it at a very young age. That's the reason why you speak a particular language. If you're raised in a bilingual household, for example, you speak that both languages. The point that I want to make is that a lot of people tend to think of things as, okay, what data is out there? I'm not so predisposed to being a business person. I'm not so predisposed to being an entrepreneur. So I don't think I will try it. But a lot of the things that entrepreneurs or successful entrepreneurs do, what lead to their success, are things that they learn. And my point is, there's a lot of things that we can teach people as well, or expose people through mentorship, for example, and give anybody that opportunity. So I kind of mention a lot of different things, but the point I want to make is if it is that somebody has an interest to pursue entrepreneurship, no matter the field that they're in, whether it be STEAM, whether it be another field, whether they studied it for a very long time or they're just starting out, if we think about the growth mindset theory, let's say, I think we can put the tools in anybody's hand to kind of teach them how to go down that path.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone?
Awesome. I read that book too. Oh my goodness. But yes, it's for me, I was never one of the students in school who was great at math or anything like that. I think in terms of science, for me, it was just some biology and chemistry, and then I just like, you know what, no, that's not my area. But yeah, there is a significant link between having qualifications in STEM disciplines that will definitely enhance one's potential, not just in the creating business or creating spaces, but on top management levels. STEM, especially now in the digital age, it is important for, I would think, everyone right now to have some sort of digital capacity. For me, in agriculture, it was a learning process. I started off the business just thinking agriculture. And it's a continuous learning. Is you have to learn and you have to ask questions and to be involved in what is happening and the change that's happening around your environment. But in terms of the agricultural space, I mentioned before the difficulties that farmers are facing. And when I first started off, these were the difficulties that I myself was facing. Now, by leveraging technology, we can actually optimize crop management and automate certain tasks that I don't know, I don't really have to focus on those areas right now, but I can able to put my time and energy in something more important. Collecting data on soil and the weather, and pest outbreaks, and to be there before the actual situation happens. This is a game changer. So you have to know what space you're in and how technology can leverage that. How can that make you be more competitive? Because the Caribbean region is far behind in terms of the rest of the world in terms of technology. We don't want to be at the back. We want to be able to be up there and be competitive on a global market. So STEM skills are very important, and it will help us to be more innovative, help us to develop new products and new markets, and to stay competitive in a rapidly changing space. But I must have to say that while we want to encourage people to have that digital space, I have to emphasize that the need that digital skills cannot stand alone. We have to encourage our people to be well-rounded. Soft skills such as communications and leadership and problem solving takes businesses to the next level. That's what makes entrepreneurs, is seeing things on a global scale and to analyze that and working with your team and building a team. We need those skills. So I have to encourage, if you're looking to get involved in anything in business or leveraging technology, you have to have a well-rounded balance. Technology and non-technical skills have to go hand in hand.
I couldn't agree more with that, because oftentimes struggle to be able to wear all of those different hats all at the same time and to do it effectively and to find the space to do it. As we work with entrepreneurs through our efforts here, we hear this cry all the time. But it's so increasingly important, and perhaps Jennifer can elaborate a little bit more on how some of those hard skills and understanding the nuances to articulate your story and to document your story as well, to be able to leverage that to access resources, to access opportunities, is so increasingly important, even at the level of an entrepreneur. So, Jennifer, maybe you can share a little bit on this question.
Sure, thanks, Angela. I think my approach to this question, one, goes back a little bit to the inspiration to enter ICT and tech. When I went to university, I studied information systems management. At the time, it was a pretty new discipline, was, not quite computer science, was in the business school rather than in the engineering and math department. But that was fueled by naked curiosity. I was, I wouldn't say obsessed, but I was definitely fascinated with computers and what they could do and what they would mean. And so studied information systems. Since then, I have formally studied both finance and law. And I would have to say there's now the sweet spot in my career where I use all three disciplines. And that has been, for me, the catalyst for my career progression, because the understanding of technology, the understanding of how transformative it can be, the understanding of how to use innovation to deliver the other successes that you need in business, and the fact that it is now that section or transformation of those traditional business functions where they're being enveloped by technology and by what we know in ICT and how we're able to drive success in business. So for me, the question about the evidence between or the links between STEM disciplines and potential success in business is very clear. That's living my career progression. And like I said, my inspiration, I started just with naked curiosity about computers. I think after the naked curiosity and original training, that changed to me, just wanting to push the envelope, change the status quo, see what else they could do, how I could use technology. And then it's evolved from that to, I would say, now my focus is more analytic and, how can we problem solve? How do we eradicate some of the challenges that we have? How do we design policies so that they make better use of the capabilities that we have now that come out of technology, and so move us to a different place in terms of business development and economic opportunities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Julene, would you also like to share your thoughts on this question?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the top management portion and just the concept of climbing the corporate ladder. Around 10 years ago, maybe we could see a clear delineation between tech companies and companies that were operating outside of tech. Right now in 2023 and for the past few years, that line has been very blurry. I can essentially say that every company is a tech company at this point. There's some form of technology supporting the operations, some form of systems that need maintenance, development. And so we've seen a transition where you just definitely have a greater importance and focus being placed on employees and members of companies with digital skills and who are very comfortable navigating digital technologies. Another thing is that, as this was mentioned before, technology is a tool for change. It's an agent of change, and it cannot operate in a silo. It has to hold hands with other industries. Collaborations need to take place. The critical thinking skills have to merge with that technical skill to be able to apply emerging technologies, whether it be blockchain, whether it be Web3, whether it be AI, to existing problems that we see. Because at the end of the day, a successful digital solution is as a result of somebody identifying a very clear problem that many people face and then building something around that. Very quickly as well, I want to touch on the entrepreneurs. Something that I have seen from interacting with women in business, especially small business owners, is that many of them want to recreate the wheel. So I've had persons come to me and say, Julene, I want to sell these products that I'm making. I handmade these earrings. I want to sell them. So right now I'm looking into developing a website from scratch so that I can host my products and have people buy it. And the thing about technology is that it is supposed to make our lives easier and allow us to focus on the work that I would say is actually truly important. So something, for example, that we've done as Caribbean Girls Hack is working with women in inner city areas to teach them how to leverage existing technologies like Shopify to set up their shops from the drag and drop functionalities of Shopify. And then they can now pour their time and energy into their craft and into other areas of their business that they really do and ought to be, investing themselves in. So that's how I'd answer that question from both the route of the corporate ladder as well as for business owners and small business entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much. I think you've given us a really, really important segue into the third question. But before we get there, and that's around creativity and utilizing digital technology to enhance our creative skills, etc. But before we get there, I think there are a couple of things that we also need to be cognizant of in this discussion, and that is that there is unequal access to technology. We talk about the fact that rural communities have less connectivity, so that hinders the opportunities for some to engage. We also recognize that equipment is very expensive. So some people may have a smartphone, and in some instances, that's all you need to be able to truly engage. In our conversation yesterday, we talked a little bit about how advanced some geographical locations are in terms of utilizing smartphone technology to do business. And where we are in the Caribbean region are paces behind that. But what can we do, or what are some of the things that we can think about to enhance access to technology, the technological devices themselves, to data so that we can actually engage online, and to information that helps to connect some of those dots. So before we go to the other formal question, maybe if you have any thoughts on those aspects, I'd be happy to hear from any of you.
I think if I could just jump in here, I think you mentioned it, you touched on it quite well. If I had a magic wand, I would love to wave it and give internet access, stable, fast, reliable internet access to everybody in the Caribbean region, because I think it will be a game changer. Funny enough, at least in St. Vincent, where I'm from, the latest research has shown that a lot of people already have access to devices, mostly through smartphones. So we have a very, very high mobile penetration. But as you mentioned, unfortunately, in some areas, the internet access is not that fast, it's not that stable, it's not that reliable. What does that mean? It means that, okay, a lot of the discussions that we had, whether it be giving women access to Shopify, teaching them how to set up their market, what I mentioned, coding boot camps, etc., this comes first. Actually, this is the foundation before we get to do any of those things. If the internet connection is unreliable and somebody learns to code and they get a job that's paying 100,000 US dollars a year, which exists, and they work from the Caribbean region, unfortunately, they might decide to move out of the Caribbean region because they realize the internet is not stable enough to be able to continue to do that job. So those are my thoughts. I wish I had a magic wand to just wave it and give everybody fast internet access at a low cost as well.
Thank you. Noted. Cost is a factor for sure. Does anyone else want to quickly jump in there before we go to the third question?
Sure, Angela. I think this is where the availability and us prioritizing the collection of data becomes important, because we're unable to solve the right problems if we don't have the data to help us do that. Technology can help us solve problems, but we need data. As a region, we need to embrace data collection. We need to not be worried about collecting large volumes of data. We need to prioritize doing that. We need to sensitize people to how data collection can improve their lives so that they're more willing to cooperate with data collection initiatives. And we also need to prioritize how to ensure people about being safe online, because a lot of the mobile penetration are for, as I think somebody mentioned before, their personal things that you're doing on your smartphone might extend to banking, probably some entertainment, but the digital adoption has to go to a different level now where we're using it and it can be prioritized through the public sector, in that making the citizens have more opportunities for using data, for embracing technology, and for giving data that the collection will assist us in how to penetrate more ICT solutions and so on. And I think regionally, we may be a little bit gun shy about data collection methods, but we do need disaggregated data. We need data that is disaggregated along the lines of gender, because that will tell us the true stories about how the devices are being used, about what levels people are on the digital maturity spectrum, and really what our digital skill sets are.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I couldn't agree more. I know for a fact that our UN leadership met last week at a retreat, and one of the points of focus that they discussed was how to help with this digital transformation and issues around the need for data privacy laws, and protections are all part of that conversation. So the UN system is poised to help our countries in this region move forward in relation to being meaningfully engaged and capitalizing on the advantages of the digital space in terms of technology, the use of technology to advance our collection of information and our use of that information to improve the livelihoods of citizens of the region. So you're very much on point with that. I'm also aware that there are discussions happening at the level of CARICOM through our heads of government, looking at how can they reduce costs to make sure that data is more easily available and accessible for citizens in the region. We have tremendously high roaming fees even. So we talk about the challenges with interregional travel, but interregional communication is also a challenge. So there are a lot of things that are happening all at the same time. And we just have to make sure that we keep our fingers on the pulse of this small area, which is becoming larger and larger and which needs our attention. And as you rightfully said, the better we collect the data to inform how we attend to the issues as related to women and young people in this space, the better we will be able to engage and effectively program to assist. There are two other points that I want to come to after this next question. And so you can just put it in your mind a little bit. We didn't have a formal question around it, but it's in relation to the issue of security and safety online, in relation to different forms of violence that individuals are being exposed to online, and how do we attend to that in terms of awareness, protection, safety issues, and other safety issues as well in relation to data privacy. So those two things, hopefully we'll get a chance to come back to in a minute. But our third major question that we had posed to you was looking at the whole issue of using technology from a creative angle. We touched on it a little bit just now, as Jeline spoke to, Jeline, I think, and Janika also spoke to helping entrepreneurs utilize online platforms that are available to potentially, for example, sell their products. That's one aspect. But how can women, young girls, and boys see themselves as creators in the digital technology space in any different multitude of ways? So you're free to reflect on what comes to mind most for you. We know that a lot of young people are engaging in this space through social media, but how can they potentially transform that in a creative way that may help to enhance their ability to monetize their engagement so that they can seek economic benefit, given that many of them have a very entrepreneurship spirit? They are interested in connecting with people in a different way. They like the immediate gratification and visual connectivity of the digital space. So how do we encourage our young people or people in general to take this to another level? And you're free to jump in.
I'll jump in. I'll
I'll
go
take.
first with the question.
Go ahead.
Um, no, I just have a few thoughts here. I love that you mentioned that a lot of young people consume on the internet, consume when it comes to social media. If you think about TikTok, Instagram, etc. I'm gonna approach this from the classic, let's say, type of creator that comes to mind when you think about a creator. It's a very lucrative space, actually. There's a lot of thousands of millions, actually, of US dollars going on, flying around, let's say, in this space right now. But unfortunately, not a lot of Caribbean creators are taking advantage of it. I think the issue is twofold. I think one, we tend to consume but not create. And I think this might be connected to a lack of precedence or a lack of example, let's say, of people creating and being successful. I think if we have a situation where there's
Yeah.
several content
Yes.
creators popping up across the region, who are successful, let's say, not only from the amount of followers, but also, bringing in money, then we'll kind of see get the ball rolling. But how do we get to that point? I think Julene was the one who mentioned living out loud, not being afraid to, for example, post about things that you're doing, etc. This is something I share a lot with women specifically, because we tend to be shy, or we tend to think, okay, no, I'm not gonna share this thing that I am doing, or I'm not gonna talk about my successes too loudly. It makes me look too proud. But in our space, especially in a minority space, it's really important for people to see the example of what can be done, and this encourages other people to get the ball rolling. That's one. I think that's one part of it. But another part of it, that I definitely have to mention, is the regulatory barriers. When I say the regulatory barriers, if I think about savings, so for example, I've spoken to creators who said, yes, I want to sell things online. I want to monetize my YouTube channel. I want to monetize my TikToks. TikToks, for example, just opened a fund yesterday where creators could put some of their content behind a paywall. Unfortunately, for some Caribbean islands, St. Vincent being one of them, we cannot we cannot set up a business account on PayPal. And this makes it difficult when it comes to monetizing. How do we get the funds transferred from these big tech companies to us? So we need to think about that aspect as well. How do we make it possible, and open? I know that there are some platforms, so some people watching this might say, oh, but there's Payoneer. I know that there are some platforms, but the fact remains that we are not so mature in this area in terms of receiving funds from overseas, and we need to think a little bit more and be more enthusiastic, let's say, and take that seriously, because it's a hindrance. It's one of the most lucrative fields right now, and even social media sites are thinking about ways to keep creators on their site, because they realize that's how that they can keep the engagement going. So it's twofold. We need to think about how we can encourage people, but we also really need to think about the regulations we have in place and how do we break those barriers.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's pretty that's pretty significant. I mean, we talk so much about about globalization and being global citizens, and the fact that the world is our oyster. And here's a very, very clear example of us not quite being there yet, because this last few years has really changed how we interact and connect and do business and communicate and all of those things, as the digital revolution, as they say, takes us forward. And we talk about technological progress, but this is a very, very critical area where there's still definitely a need for some attention. So thank you for bringing that up. It definitely resonates in this space in relation to this particular group of individuals that we're now talking about, our young people, and what may appeal to them in terms of opportunity, for engagement, for participation in the digital space. So thank you for that. Um, um, any of the other ladies wish to opine on this question?
Absolutely. I'd love to jump in. Firstly, I just want to say that Janika really hits the nail on the head. And I love the way that she always highlights the foundational barriers and just the building blocks that are missing, that are supposed to really fuel the rest of this digital revolution for youth and for women in the Caribbean. So, she mentioned just the internet access realities, as well as just now she spoke about How are we accessing funds, and how are our payment systems here integrating with the global ones that would enable us to connect to this multi-million dollar influencer creator space? And so sometimes I do think we jump the gun and we focus immediately on the women, immediately on the youth. But the fact is, they're physical, literal barriers that even if we were empowered, aware, and we upskill ourselves within the region, what else is stopping us? And there are definitely conversations that need to take place there for sure. Another angle that I want to approach the creator aspect is just from entrepreneurship. I think sometimes when we think about creativity and creators, we focus on the self-employed, but let's talk about instances where companies are innovating and building technologies that affect the masses. So an example that I like to use is in the States, there was a pilot of an AI face recognition system aimed at identifying wanted criminals or just wanted persons. And when it was put into test, we realized that it was disproportionately identifying Black faces as wanted individuals, even though this was not the case. It's not that there were several wanted people that were Black and the tool was completely accurate. It's just that it was tested on mostly white faces, or in the room where these features were being developed, there were probably not many Black faces influencing the path of these technologies. So even for persons who are, employed, working within a company, just having that creator mindset and understanding that the decisions that you make ought to also reflect the people that look like you, and you deserve to be there because you're actually allowing the world to be a more inclusive place, because inclusive solutions start with many people sitting at the table of creativity.
Thank you very much for that. It brings to bear one of the messages that would have been shared in the video earlier, in that the digital world and its systems still perpetuate certain biases and inequalities, and we need to be mindful of that as we seek to continue to advance in this space. Jennifer, would you like to opine on this from the perspective of maybe drawing a little bit more on what Jalene was just saying in terms of from the business environment, and how you use creativity within that environment to appeal perhaps to your younger clientele?
Yeah, thanks, Angela. There's no doubt about it. That creator space is definitely on the radar of most businesses that want to be innovative, that are looking to capture younger audiences, that are looking to capture digital savvy audiences. The basics are there. You have to be on social media, you have to speak their language, you have to be able to do things that engage their interests. And one of the things, going back to Janika's point about whether we have the correct foundations or systems to allow for creativity to explode and to have the benefit of that, is that we have to regionally, we have to think about what digital transformation means. And what it doesn't mean is move. Transform doesn't mean move. So you can't take traditional processes, paper policies that were created when there was not this digital infrastructure, there was not this technological advancement, and simply, now move them over, put them online or put them in PDF and think that you have native policies that will help with economic expansion and development. Transformation is just that. There has to be a metamorphosis. Things have to change. So it's not about moving traditional systems online, moving traditional banking online, or moving payment system. It's about transforming those things. The needs of the consumer, whether they are women or men, are different. Their desires are different. how they are creating is different, um, how they are generating income is different. And so those things have to change. It has to be a transformation, not a movement. So it's not about moving things online or moving things to digital. And I think we see too much of that, where we haven't done that complete metamorphosis. But transformation is change. So it has to look different. It has to behave differently, in order for us to have true digital transformation and for us to be at the point where we are embracing and encouraging new ways of generating economic activity, and of providing the environment that people in the region want, and that they're aspiring to, and they're bringing the ingenuity, they're bringing the innovation, and the systems have to allow for that.
I agree. And I think part of it is the fact that in that transformation, we have to recognize that it's a multi-pronged approach. There's several layers to informing that transformation. And part of that is sensitizing the community or the users or the beneficiaries of that change, so that they are comfortable with the change as it happens, and recognizing that everyone is not going to embrace it and adapt as quickly as everyone else, and giving some room for that. So it's a process. You're very right. It's a process of metamorphosis, from one stage to the next. Bevon, before we move on to our online audience, would you also like to opine on this question?
Sure. I mean, they said it all. But I would just like to emphasize that we have to encourage the boys and our girls and our women to see themselves as creators and developers. We have been consuming too much, and stop thinking that we just have to adapt. We have to develop, and we have to create. We have to see what is happening in our communities, and to be the change makers ourselves. But that has, as Janika said, it has to have, we have to build a foundation. A lot of the foundations are stem within the policies in our government. So we have to influence them. We have to ensure that our voices are heard, that our interests are being addressed, and we can actually influence the policies. That is only how we can create that space, how we can create a foundation that these creators can build upon.
We do have an online audience joining us today, and we do have a question coming from our online audience for you panelists, directed to no one in particular. The question is, what about those women who just refuse or are hesitant to see the need for technological innovation in enhancing their product and entry into the wider market space? What are your thoughts on that?
I will go. I think I encountered a situation like that recently. It with the agro processors here in Grenada. Um, we're trying to leverage at this point to we have access to markets. They're still stuck in the, I would say, the traditional way of doing things. And trying to, and in the parts of our communication, it was seem that they can't be bothered. We're just willing to just sell in Grenada. But I think we have to show them what is there, what is there, what is available out there, and how they can access it. I think they are just, in that perspective, confined to what they see around them, and they have not really explored the potential, the global market that that they can capture. Sometimes they feel as if that they cannot do it, and it plays back a lot into how our upbringing, that we have to limit ourselves to the shores of our islands. We have to conform to the norms of our society, but we have to break those barriers and to show that it doesn't matter if you're from Grenada or St. Vincent. The global market, that is our playground, and we have access to it just as anyone else. But we have to position ourselves correctly. We have to learn, and we have to adapt, and we have to leverage technology in order to capture those markets. If we have to be competitive, there's no other choice. We have to change the way that we operate our businesses, change the way that we even communicate, change the way that we package and we process. But as I said, it's how the problem is now is showing them that the opportunity is there, and actually walking them through the process of getting to that position. Sometimes for example, as a farmer, majority of the time they are so focused on in the lands, they're trying to maintain their farm operations. They cannot even try to step back to learn new skills. So how do we fix that? That is a problem. And what I'm working on right now is to show them how to create a platform where that we can take away the management aspect of the agribusiness, right? We can, if we have a consultant or an app that does that for you, then fine. Then you can focus on your day to day. But if we do not show them how to use it and have them the consistent training, it will just add more difficulties at the end of the day.
Thank you very much on point. Would one other person like to opine on that question? And if not, then I will ask another question.
Yeah, I would just like to add on to what Bevon mentioned, that I really think change is hard, change is difficult, change is uncomfortable. And if you really focus on the person that you're thinking about, so to the person that asked this question, maybe you have somebody in mind. If you approach it from a problem solving perspective, you might have better success when it comes to change. So if you, for example, take the time out to understand what problems that they are facing, because a lot of times it's not that they don't have issues, it's that they just don't want to take the effort to change the way that things are going a certain way. They know how to deal with exactly what they're dealing with. They don't want to bring in extra factors, as Bevon mentioned. But if you take the time out to find out what problem they're facing, go off, see, okay, how can, based on this problem, they said that they cannot answer customers fast enough. Can I take technology, show them a small proof of concept that, hey, you mentioned this problem to me. If you use this tool, actually, you could reply to 20 people per day as opposed to one person per day. That could be a very actionable point that you can do to address the problem that they're having, and little by little introduce them to the good of technology. It's one thing to just say, oh, technology is great, you should use it. And another thing to take it in small bites and see how you can address the problems that they're facing.
So you're alluding to a very critical issue that we have when we speak to entrepreneurs across the region, female entrepreneurs across the region, and that is mentorship and the importance of mentorship and opportunities to have that buddying system to help people move from point A to point B in terms of their knowledge, their understanding, their skills development, to grow their mindset, their businesses, their opportunities. So that's a very critical point. I'm going to ask Jennifer and Jeline maybe to reflect on another question. And that is, we recognize that the greater use of ICT also presents or has presented greater opportunities for a different type of level of gender-based violence. We recognize that people are at risk. These spaces can be beneficial to our lives, but they can also potentially be detrimental. What are your thoughts on the risk of gender-based violence in terms of the online space? Jennifer, Jeline,
Sure.
any thoughts on that?
Yes, of course. I'd love to jump in. I think with the presence of social media, for one, we can see that women, young girls are sharing much more. Many of the features of these social media platforms enable for real-time updates to be shared with members of the public. So, for example,
minute.
Hello, just checking if you're able to hear me, everyone. Hello. Angela?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought I dropped off for a second. Right, so I was just saying, based on some of the features of social media platforms, it facilitates real-time updates of things like our location, or surroundings, or travel plans. And so what you have sometimes are women and girls oversharing. They might be posting a story displaying or disclosing more than they thought they were about themselves. And so this gives an opportunity for predators to lurk on these platforms, target the vulnerable. And so definitely there is a need for education around how to smartly interact with these platforms. Digital literacy is definitely more than just knowing how to interact with the tools, being very savvy in what you can create using the tools, but it's also understanding how to protect yourself, how to prevent unwanted outcomes. And so that's one take for sure. Similarly, we have to ensure that we are doing the work as policymakers to put structures in place that really penalize abusive or just behaviors on platforms that take advantage of some of these risks. So, what are we doing to ensure that the content being posted is safe? If it is that inherently a particular social media platform does not have those safety measures in place, do we as a country, as a region, want to be very proactive about saying, hey, this is what's acceptable and this is what we're going to put in place to protect our youth, protect our children, protect our women. And so tweaks will have to be made to operate in this region, as we've seen other global regions do to protect their citizens. So those are just some of my thoughts and ideas around that area. But definitely we do see where this digital era has given rise to new types of predation and just violence against women in particular. So I do think that even understanding how to use the technologies might even allow us to better protect ourselves, to alert others. So, what tools are we creating so that we can feel a part of a community and supported, even in cases where we are going through things? Are the messages that we're sharing uplifting our fellow women who may be victims of abuse and so forth, or are they triggering? What are we doing to prevent and protect or vulnerable from those triggers?
Thank you very much. I think I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but there was a comment made about making sure that we are introducing education about the digital space from very early in our school curricula. And this should be, I think, part of what is discussed, not just how to use the tools, but how to safely use the tools, how to think critically about content. Even in terms of, we had this during COVID-19 where folks were sharing information that they Googled from any and everywhere. How do we know that a source is a credible source, et cetera, et cetera? So there are a lot of safety aspects that need to be addressed in the digital space. And hopefully, as we evolve more, we will do more to attend to that. I'm quickly going to turn to another question that we have online. As we are approaching the end of our conversation, I'd like to ask all of you to also reflect very, very carefully on a final parting thought or suggestion that you'd like to make to this conversation. But this one, Jennifer, since you didn't get a chance to opine on the GBV question, maybe you can answer this one. Business development and ownership are the next phases for women in ICT. How do we ensure that women have sufficient access to capital to become not just skilled in ICT, but owners of businesses in ICT services? That's perfect for you.
Thank you, Angela. It's actually a very good question. It's a great question, actually. One of the things I will have to go back to as a foundation in terms of, and I do agree that business development and business ownership is the next thing that we're going to be conquering for women in ICT, and that it's important that we have representation in those facets of business. But I think where we start is data. Right now, in the financial services space, there are some inherent biases in terms of gaining access to capital. The way some, even if you look at newer operations or newer streams for business capital availability for new entrepreneurs or people expanding businesses, some of the business models are inherently biased against women with not the same economic background or work history as men. And in some of those situations, especially now where we're seeing artificial intelligence at work in terms of determining who qualifies for loan packages or other types of capital, is that we need data. We need disaggregated data. We need to be able to identify those biases when I don't remember which speaker was talking about when the AI initiatives are done and they work with a flawed approach, then it inadvertently disenfranchises women who would otherwise have an opportunity to qualify. Remember, we're going for equity and not necessarily equality. It's for what does somebody need in order for them to be able to succeed. And for some women, they need a different algorithm than you would use for a man because of traditional roles. They may not have worked outside of the home, may not have that work history that a man may have had, may not have several other of those components in terms of having that algorithm decide if they are a good candidate for capital, but may have some idea, the will to succeed, the opportunity to qualify and to make additional capital avenues available, because that's not preferential, it's offering equity.
So much. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate that response. As we are coming to the close of our panel discussion, I would like to ask each of our panelists to please share one final thought that they would like to leave with our audience this morning in 30 seconds or less. We do have our UN Women Representative, Tawny Broadborough, standing by to give closing remarks. So we will go to her following your closing statements. Bevan, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you again, UN Women, for the opportunity to share my own thoughts and and feeling for how technology should be leveraged in the Caribbean, and how women and girls need to embrace it, and boys definitely. My parting advice is you have to understand what it is that you want, to identify your purpose very early. And to do that, you have to step out of your comfort zone, and you have to definitely build or develop a growth mindset. ICT itself is a vast field with different areas from software development and a whole slew of stuff. But you have to identify what it is that you want to do and to go after it. From there, you seek learning opportunities, online courses, coding camps, you name it. You just put yourself out there and you gain that hands-on experience. And most importantly, you have to experiment. You have to try and you have to play and you have to have fun while learning and while trying to create something new. So just go out there and embrace technology, but you have to understand and figure out what it is that you really want to achieve for yourself, for your community, for your country, and how technology can help you leverage that.
Thank you so much. Who's next? Julie?
I can jump in. Oh, Julie.
Oh, sure. So, similarly, thank you for bringing us all together to have this conversation as women across the Caribbean. To close, I do want to urge women and young girls to explore and explore widely. Do not limit yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't worry about becoming super niche in anything that you do too soon. Give yourself the space to make mistakes, the space to try new things, and also definitely seek counsel. Reach out to women in the industry, reach out to women, anybody really that you look up to, that you see doing something. Don't be afraid to connect and initiate conversations with them. You might send some emails, you might send some messages, maybe only half will reply, maybe only one person will reply, but that may still change your life. So if you have a goal, you have a dream, you have a passion, and you see somebody working in that realm, don't be afraid to connect with them. And another thing that I want to urge us to do is to diversify our mindset when it comes to mentorship. For example, sometimes as women, we might seek counsel of older women or women who are very seasoned in their careers. But I have been so inspired myself, even just by students and young women, children with fresh mindsets. So let's also be open to the fact that somebody younger, even a child, can really impart so much inspiration, widen our minds, and be a great mentor to us as well. So those are just some parting words for me. Happy International Women's Day. I hope we all honor the women in our lives today that have shaped us.
Thank you so much. Janika?
Yes, I will continue here. I will echo the thoughts of the others. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come and share my thoughts. Piggybacking off of what Julene just said, my parting word is community. Find community. There's so many Caribbean communities out there. I would mention, for example, my community, Women in Tech Caribbean. It's really important. This field, especially as a woman, can be very lonely. If I think about myself, for example, I work with a lot of men, a lot of programmers who are men. But what has, helped me stay in this field is community. A lot of women join the field out of curiosity, the field of technology in general, and unfortunately, quite a few of them drop out. And one thing that has been proven to kind of help them is community. So having a community, being a part of a community, knowing that you can reach out to somebody, ask them for advice, also seeing examples, some of the things that we mentioned in this discussion today. A lot of the times when you see an example of what can be done, you realize, oh, wait, this is open to me as well. I can do something like this. That happens as well when you're a part of a community. Also, think about how much knowledge you can gain from others. Jolene mentioned, for example, students, mentors in this space, and so forth. And opportunity, I have to say opportunity as well. If I think about my job, how I got my job, it was community. A lot of the time, businesses are more keen to hire you if you're referred by somebody who is already in the business. How can you meet people? Community. So that's my parting word.
Thank you so very much. And Jennifer, last and by certainly no means least.
Thank you, Angela. Happy International Women's Day to all the ladies who have joined us today. Thank you to the panelists. I've really enjoyed the conversation, would love to continue it. I think for me, my parting words, for me, technology has always been synonymous with potential. There is incredible potential in this as a career opportunity. Digital skills are now life skills. I wholly believe that. And they have to be cultivated by women and men at every juncture of life. We're talking about students, we're talking about mature workers who need to reskill and who still have contributions to make to the work community. And I guess what I would say is to embrace being flexible, being open-minded, question the status quo. That's always been my mantra. It's always, how can we do this different? How can we do this better? And embrace equity. You can't escape technology. It is in every facet of our existence as human beings right now, and you should not try to avoid it. It's time for us to embrace technology and to embrace equity. I've had a great time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our panel of phenomenal women in tech in the Caribbean. I now would like to ask the UN Women Representative for the Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean, Ms. Tanya Ann Broadber, to share her closing remarks with us.
Thank you so much, and Angela. I was saying you're giving me a promotion. But ladies, this has been so insightful. I think a lot of the points that you made, I kept having to sit and reflect a little bit more on exactly how important this conversation has been. We're talking about data and internet access, and how what this has meant across the world is that most women do not have the kind of access to data that they should, and internet access that they should. Technology and innovation is such a critical tool for development. There's no way that we will be able to move forward without its full integration into our communities, into our societies. But if the access to communication has a barrier that is price related, not only is that going to affect women and girls negatively, because we find many women and girls at the lower end of our socioeconomic classes, but all persons in lower socioeconomic classes who are watching their pennies and have to think between a core livelihood choice and data and access. That is another person's potential that we are losing within the growth sector of internet technology. We can see digitization making these seismic shifts in our culture and our community. And what we also need to have, and you spoke to this as well, are the tools for women, girls, boys, and men to be able to adequately understand how to use this effectively. How and what to share in the long term, what that means for you, and how best to ensure that what you share works in the long term for you. This week and next week is the Commission on the Status of Women, and many ministers across Barbados and the OECS are there negotiating what the international standards should be in the ways in which we engage ICT for gender equality and women's empowerment. And we need to really look at that main point made around content creation being a lucrative space. But if you don't have the policies and legislation in place for the larger companies globally, how can we ensure that the people making content here can use those paywalls that TikTok is offering? So we really need to make sure that we are not at the back of this work in terms of understanding how economies are changing. The analysis required that one of you have indicated you're doing now. How can we inform the legislative and policy agenda with that analysis so we are at the forefront and leading from the front and not catching up from behind? We have to also make sure that these barriers to entry do not stall the innovation that comes with diverse perspectives. Whether it is a small AI indicator that looks at Black faces as criminal, it's small in the beginning because you're not thinking of it if you are not from that space, but it's big in terms of outcome. I always use the example, I've been using it for years, of when they put those new machines into the airports and Black women's hair just was not hair that they thought of for those machines. So every time you walk through the machine, somebody had to put their hand in your hair because it did not recognize it as safe. And the same thing for women, bras. Every time you walk through, it seems these machines do not understand that bras exist and they have to touch very closely depending on the kind of bra that you have. That is why we need diverse voices at the table. We need diverse voices at the table for the creation of the programs that are really defining what is secure and insecure in our space. And we also need it for the content that is created so that we can start changing our perceptions of one another and promoting healthy behavioral techniques and examples. So thank you to these 4 incredible women from Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean for keeping us on our toes. Please keep doing it. Let's not only have these conversations on International Women's Day when the focus is on ICT, but let's make sure that we're advocating in our civil society groups and with governments to make sure that the policies and legislation are in place to ensure that most people who engage in ICT can do so safely, in an enabling environment, and fully accessible in an inclusive way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tawny. With just a minute left to go, my role now is just to say thanks to all who have helped to facilitate this morning's panel discussion, to the phenomenal women who joined us this morning to share their insights. Thank you, Tawny, for bringing those remarks. Thank you to the RC for his remarks at the opening. Thank you to my UN colleagues for helping us facilitate this forum this morning, and to UETV. And last but not least, thank you to the online audience for joining us. Watch this space. We will be back with more innovative discussions on women in technology. But most importantly, today and every day, have a wonderful day. It is International Women's Day 2023.